Alright, so this is a random video. Typically on this channel, I talk about narcissism on the macro scale, so more like things going on in society where narcissism appears in, certain dynamics or whatever. So, but today I'm going to talk about something that is more specific to narcissistic abuse in interpersonal relationships. So, and then maybe there is a way to also, or maybe it would also apply on the macro level. I'm not sure, but we'll see. So, what I wanted to talk about is the narcissistic abuse cycle is love bombing, devalue, discard, start all over. Love bombing, devalue, discard, start all over. So the other thing that I noticed about abusers or narcissists, and I say abusers because I think narcissist is overused, and I think it sugarcoats or overrides the fact that these are very, like, depending on how far on the scale they are, they're abusive, and that's just what it is. It's not anything other than that. So yeah, anyway, within narcissistic relationships, when you interact with an abusive person, like I said, you will notice that when they verbally abuse, or let's see, at times when you have interactions with them and they are, spewing off all this bullshit and emotional abuse and verbal abuse, what I'm trying to say is it kind of follows a similar pattern to the overall relationship dynamic cycle as well. Meaning, like I said, I noticed when being around narcissistic people that it would start off chill sometimes, or, whatever. But sometimes it would just start at the devaluing stage, and it would be just a bunch of, again, like, saying all this shit about, I can't be around you, and I can't, whatever it might be, just commenting on shit that you're doing or how you're acting or whatever that's bothering them. So nitpicking, essentially, is also what some of that is. And so that's the devaluing aspect, the emotional and verbal abuse. And then the discarding is, and I don't know if anyone on here has experienced this, but I have many times in the past with narcissists, especially in romantic relationships, but I have also heard about this happening in relationships with parents, between parents and children as well, where if you say something that the narcissist doesn't like, or even if you don't, honestly, you could sit there on the phone with them the entire conversation, or you could sit there in person with them the entire conversation, not saying anything, and they will still, or you could say like 2 words, and they will still find some way to flip it onto you as if you're the one doing something wrong, and make it sound like you're trying to argue with them, and then either leave or hang up the phone. And then another thing that they will do that also constitutes as stonewalling. And then another thing, stonewalling is like refusing to take accountability for or address certain things in a conversation. So like approaching somebody to try to talk about something serious, and every time they leave the room or say, I'm leaving the house, and don't hear you out. That's stonewalling. Anyway, but also the hanging up can constitute as discarding, like a mini discard almost, because obviously narcissists always come back, but the hanging up sometimes is preceded by blocking. That's another very typical thing I've heard that narcissists do, and I have experienced it myself, where they will hang up and then block you if they don't want to talk, or again, that's emotional abuse. It's also, like I said, kind of like a mini discard, because they kind of ghost you for a little while by blocking you or leave you hanging, even if it's just for an hour or a few hours. And so I just noticed that, and I just kind of connected the two together, and yeah, it happens in large ways and in small ways in the dynamic. And so that makes sense to me now, what leads to those abandonment and rejection wounds for people who grow up with narcissistic parents, because you're constantly being either devalued or discarded. I mean, there might be some niceness, but there's a lot of devalue, discard, a lot of like inadvertently in the abusive messages telling you you're not good enough, there's something wrong with you, and then that's the rejection piece, and then I don't want shit to do with you, or I'm done. For example, I'll just use an example I've heard before from a narcissist, like, I'm done, being a parent. I'm done parenting, or whatever. Like, saying those words to your child is emotionally abusive. I mean, it's scary for a child to hear something like that from their parent. It creates this unpredictability of, oh, so what does that mean? Are you gonna leave me? Are you like, you don't love me? So yeah, that's also an example of how those wounds can be created in very subtle ways that we might not realize, but because of that dynamic of the devalue and discard, experiencing that over and over again, even in very subtle ways, is damaging and confusing and stressful for anybody. But I'm just specifically thinking parent-child dynamic right now in my mind, because of the example I used. But the other thing I was gonna say is, so it creates that fear of the abandonment, because you're telling this person over and over again, there's something wrong with you, I don't want to be around you, and it can get to those extremes of, oh, I'm not going to parent you anymore, things like that. And then usually the narcissist will do things, whether it's emotionally or actually physically, to like check out, like just stonewall or abandon you in the moment, and then that's what creates those abandonment wounds over time. So yeah, random video, random thought.